Good afternoon. The October 7th meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust will be in order. First item on the agenda is the minutes, approval of the minutes from the September 23rd meeting.
Move approval.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from September 23rd. Are there comments or questions? Hearing none, voting please. Minutes are approved. Next item is the consent docket.
Move subject to individual consideration.
Second. Motion and a second on the consent docket. Are there matters for individual consideration or that require comments by staff? Hearing none?
That's a no. Yeah, thank you.
Hearing none, voting please. Consent docket's approved. Next item is on the next page. Concurrence docket. One item.
Move the consent docket.
Concurrence. Second. I have a motion and a second on the concurrence docket. Is there any comments or questions on that? Hearing none, voting please. Concurrent docket's approved. Next item is an emergency construction contract for a project southeast 164th and Sunny Lane.
Mr. Chairman, this emergency was caused by a failure in a 72-inch water main. We took competitive pricing very quickly and of course declared an emergency given the great loss of water that we were experiencing and the impact it was having on customers.
Any comments or questions?
Is it usual to have that kind of variance in the bid response?
For an emergency, it is. It has a lot to do with where you're working and whether you can mobilize that quickly.
Thank
How
you.
long did it take you to get it back up?
One day.
Wow,
Yeah.
very impressive.
Yeah.
Any further comments on the emergency construction contract? Voting please. I thought we had a motion. No motion.
I move.
Second. Motion and a second. Voting please. Passed. Next item is item from trustees. No, actually we do not need executive session. Is that
We
right?
do not.
A motion to strike.
Move to strike.
Have a motion and a second to strike. Voting please. Matter stricken. Next item is item from trustees. Any comments from trustees? Hearing none. Move on to general manager report. Have a presentation on the Tinker Air Force Base municipalization update.
Mr. Chairman, our consultants working with us on the municipalization project are here to give you an update from Guernsey. We have Jared Sticky and Paul Rickpost. From Montgomery Watson Harsley, we have Bob Woodhouse. Hello, Jared.
Hi. Trust members, thank you for your time this afternoon. Here together with our team to discuss with you the current status of the municipalization project. This is a slide that you've seen in the past, and this is just to refresh your recollection of where we stand in the process. We were able to complete our site visit recently. That was attended by members of both your staff and MWH and Guernsey as a team, and we'll be using that information that we gathered to move forward to the proposal submittal, which is scheduled for the first quarter of next year. This is also a slide that Bob discussed with you last time he was here, just showing as we're moving up that slope, angling up towards the right. We are now in the October meeting, and I'm here to discuss capital improvements. The star in the middle of that box there indicates that we're approximately 50% complete with the project. Project completion is on the y-axis, and of course date is on the x-axis. So to this stage we've been doing a lot of fact gathering, information gathering, and working together with the trust to develop some of the items that will go into our proposal. And as we move throughout the remaining 50% of the project, we'll be taking those items and compiling them into the technical and price proposals, which we will then be bringing back to you for your review and comment. You can see that we'll be touching base with you in each of those stars across the top and on those topics as we move forward in the project as your meetings occur. Like I said, we're here today to talk about capital improvements, and one of the main reasons the Air Force is looking for assistance is historically they've underinvested in their systems, and that underinvestment has taken place for quite some time. And so You can see from this table that many of their major components are either past their design life or will be exceeding their design life by 2017, which is when, if this project is awarded, things would begin moving forward. And so, due to the size of infrastructure on Tinker and the age, it's going to require a large and rapid capital improvement program. And we know that there's only sufficient capacity within Oklahoma City to get things done. There's only a certain amount of construction that Tinker can tolerate at any given time without interrupting their mission. So we're working together with the Trust to develop a capital program that we think is reasonable and attainable, not just for Tinker Air Force Base, but for the Trust as a utility that wants to prosecute work in a responsible manner. Next slide, please. In addition to those items that were on the last slide, which were simply age-based replacements, the solicitation from the government is also requiring some upgrades that are not necessarily related to age, but to compliance with either federal requirements or our environmental regulations. And you can read what those 11 are. They fall into 4 main categories. In addition to those, we, together with the Trust, have identified 18 other upgrades, and those go beyond what the military has identified, and those are really raising their utility operations to a standard that Aquit would consider as being appropriate for the delivery of utility services to the installation. Some of those other upgrades are also to bring more modernization and automation to their systems. They've got a fairly robustly staffed O&M staff, and they do a lot of activities every day that could be either mitigated or eliminated by moving to a more modern system of monitoring and controlling those equipment remotely using SCADA or things like that. Those will all also be included in the capital plan that we'll be bringing to you for your review. This slide just essentially recaps what we were able to accomplish while we were on our first site visit. We confirmed with Tinker that their average water consumption runs in the 2 to 3 million gallons per day. Any one day can fluctuate, but their average of 70 per month is fairly steady. We were able to visually inspect what I would call a sample of the assets. And that's above ground assets like well houses, tanks, some of the meters, and then we also were able to look at some of the lift stations and things like that were subsurface, but we could at least look into them. They have 50 lift stations on Tinker, so we certainly didn't get to see them all, and we obviously weren't able to visualize any of the buried infrastructure. That more intensive review of infrastructure begins should they choose to make an award during transition. And the reason for waiting until then is because it takes a large effort on the military's part, take a large effort on your part to actually provide the resources to do that effort, and I don't think either party is interested in doing that unless things move forward. So to understand that that's not necessarily placing undue risk on the Trust, within the contract that the government's put forward, during that they call it a joint inventory, we have the opportunity to note variances from what the solicitation provided. We have the opportunity to note additional deficiencies that might be identified. And at the end of transition, there is a one-time contract, a true-up or a modification that will take all the things that were identified. Some may result in cost increases, some may result in cost decreases. Those are all netted out, and then there's a one-time contract modification to true up for the actual condition that we're able to observe. So just to be clear, what we'll be doing together with your staff between now and then is investigating as much of that infrastructure as we can without going to that extra level of due diligence. We are attempting to schedule a second site visit to meet with some of the members from their line maintenance crew that weren't available for our first meeting, and we hope to get that meeting scheduled. We're ready to do it pretty much any time. The Air Force is a little slow sometimes in being responsive, but we will be prosecuting that meeting just as soon as we can. I think I covered everything. The assets that we inspected were actually in somewhat better condition than we would have thought just based upon the technical data library, and that was reassuring. But despite being in some good physical condition, almost every location we visited, we saw some opportunities to modify that infrastructure so it would be more consistent with the way Aqua would prefer to operate utilities. That's all that I have for you today. So I'd be happy to take any questions or yield the floor.
No, sir.
I have one, and you're confident that the one-time modification opportunity would be sufficient to protect the city and the trust in the event you found something there that was a lot worse than what you saw on your first pass through?
Sure, and I probably didn't explain that as thoroughly as I could. What the government is asking us to do is to bid to a set of inventory that was developed about 2 years ago. We asked whether they were going to update that for things that have changed since that 2 years ago, and they said, no, this is your information. So they provided us with lineal feet of pipe and number of wells and lift stations, things like that. We know there have been changes. We know there have been some facilities that have been demolished. We know they've certainly had some new construction. And so that the modification that takes place at the end of transition is really intended to sort of, the primary intent is to true up the differences in inventory between what the Air Force inventoried 2 years ago and what we're finding on the ground during transition, which would be, maybe sometime around this time next year would be the start of it. So in addition to that, we can identify major things that would be different from a deficiency standpoint. Those are all developed during that first true-up. Now, that's not the only opportunity we have to make those changes. Anytime we discover the government term is a differing site condition, something different between what was provided in the solicitation or was provided in the technical data library, which is considered the baseline for price and technical, we are able to go to the contracting officer and say, look, you told us that this well was functioning and things were fine. We made we've been operating it and it has issues, and these are the issues. This is the cost to fix. Do you want us to move forward with fixing it, in which case they would increase the price of the contract? Do you want us to decommission this well, in which case there would still be cost? Or do you want us to, what does the government want you to do? And each time you have one of those changes, there's a price adjustment that goes along with it. So that first true-up is mainly intended to deal with inventory variances.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
All right, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
We have one citizen signed up to be heard. I have a name someplace here. I can't find it. John Gleason. Give your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is John Gleason, and I live on Northwest 62nd Street, 3737. To some degree, I don't really know why I'm here, other than I was asked to come or suggested that I come, so I feel like I need to give you a little background. For the past several months, I have been one of many petitioners on 3 different petitions relating to the legalization or decriminalization of marijuana, either in the city or in the state. Most recently, I've been with some friends, setting up a petition site at the Lake Hefner Park on the Northwest Expressway, close to the highway there. And that just went without incident, and we were very happy with it because it was very productive, a lot of traffic. And then on Sunday, October 5th, an Oklahoma City police car came up and said, well, if you stay here, we'll have to cite you. And, it's like that was a surprise. We've been waving at the Oklahoma City police for weeks on end without any incident. And the officer, said the usual sort of thing as well, I'm just doing my job. I got this memo, and, it's like, well, look, this is a public park, I said, well, not really. This is, and this, it was like, well, it's actually owned by the Water Trust. It's like, well, regardless, we don't know what that is, you know. We've been there. We live in the neighborhood. We see all sorts of similar kinds of stuff going on there. So, I spent yesterday morning kind of getting a little bit of runaround from the police department and the city council. So, you know, I was just trying to get to the bottom of things. I read a little bit of Oklahoma City law, and the law is pretty clear. They want to be able to facilitate citizens, you know, doing petitions and stuff like that. So what can you help me with? Am I even in the right place?
You had contacted our staff earlier, and we knew that you were going to be here, so we've asked our attorney to look into it, and he's prepared to talk to you about it.
Great.
Mr. Gleason, back in December of 2013, the city passed an ordinance to address First Amendment assembly permits, and we need to have you work with us on working through those procedures. Whether or not you need to get a permit depends upon the size of the group that you have there and to what extent, if any, you're using the public right-of-way. And we can work with you through PIO, who helps issue the permits and helps get people organized with the city to work through that. We encourage groups who are passing petitions to notify us and to provide us an application anyway, just so that we know that they're out there. And from time to time, it's helpful to that organization, for the police to know that they're out there, should there ever be a group that was contrary to their perspective. But we'd be happy to work with you on that issue if you meet with me, and we can go talk to PIO after the meeting.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Am I done?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other matters to come before the trust? Hearing none, we're adjourned.